And welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Planet Mullins podcast. We're in season 7 already, which is amazing. And I've got an incredible Italian soccer star. No, wait a minute. Uh, a musical genius, actually. I learned about this guy through the Grammys and through some mutual friends like Ricky Cage. He's a virtuoso composer, producer, guitarist, drummer. I just found out. Please welcome Vito Gregoli. Hey, man.
Hey man, how are you?
I'm too impressed to stay on the show. I just want to like send people to your stuff and make everybody listen to you for hours. I mean,
Oh wow,
I'm looking
that's
over
so
this.
sweet.
Well, I'm looking over this list of things that you've done this year. Uh, Jim Chemo West, I found out about him about 2 years ago. He's great. Few projects you did with him. The On the Road to Wyndham uh, thing that you two guys did together is absolutely amazing. You teamed up with Ricky Cage on Wild's Monsoon.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole hour. We could talk about that, I'm sure. And then
definitely.
I'm particularly interested in this rock opera that you did, the song Divine. Um, Also, Freedom's Children. There's so many artists. And one of the things that prompted me to reach out to you was looking on Facebook. You got 5 albums up for Grammys this season. Five?
I've got actually 8 entries. I had to put a second post on because when I got the confirmation from Neris, I went, "Oops, I left 3 of them out." It's
And,
slightly embarrassing, actually.
well, I mean, it's just wonderful to see you as a person who is working so much, um, because there's a lot of people out there that aren't working as much as you are. And I watched a few of your videos in advance, and what like great, soothing, and super in tune, beautiful music. Now, are you playing bass as well? Do you play like the bass on
Yes,
some stuff?
we talked before the show about starting out as a drummer. The next
Right.
instrument I went to was bass before I went to guitar. And so it's always been very near and dear to me. And I've been doing a lot of fretless bass lately, and I've
Right,
been
right.
trying to capture the sound that I loved from Jaco Pastorius's work with Joni Mitchell,
Okay.
which is less of the weather report, and more of the very emotive stuff, the stuff that
Yeah.
Michael Mannering from Windham Hill did such a beautiful job of encapsulating. So I really wanted to capture that feeling and
Man.
sound. So I got a new bass last year, and it was like, okay, this is the one. I could finally get the sound that's been in my head all these years, and that's such a
Incredible.
gratifying feeling.
Yeah, man. I worked with a bass player, a couple of bass players from Boulder back when I was in school in Colorado. Kim Stone, who went on to play with Spyro Gyra, and Marty Ruddy, who had a 5-string Harry Fleischman electric acoustic bass. And
Wow.
he's on all of my early records, Soulscape and all that. And their inspiration was an ECM dude named Eberhard Weber. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure you know
Yeah.
about him because that's where Jocko got that,
Yeah.
was from Eberhard. And Lyle Mays did a huge tribute to Eberhard before he died, his last recording, and all that. But I heard you playing this fretless stuff, and I think it was just you and a guitarist and a percussion. Maybe you were live with Opium Moon recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a fun gig.
Okay, so I don't know. Where do we start, man? I mean,
Uh,
I don't even
well,
know.
to quote Steve Martin, I was born a poor black child, and
Well, we just lost all our viewers under 30.
that's true. Yeah. Sorry, we're dating ourselves here.
Well, that's
Um,
okay, man. I mean, I think I'm a generation past you, but when we
Not
talked
by
on the,
much.
well, when I talked with you on the phone, I was kind of amazed at how vocally you sounded way older than you look and sound musically. Like, yeah, and maybe that's just because you do so much stuff. So how do these people find you and all of a sudden they end up, what's the pathway for young people watching that are going, well, I'm tired of my Minecraft game, and now I want to be a new age guy at the Grammys. Like, how do the people contact you? Is it word of mouth, or are you just out there? How do you promote yourself?
I have to say it. Facebook has been a really good tool for reaching
Mm.
out to people, connecting with people.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the Grammy community. There are gatherings this all last weekend, actually through the whole week of the community getting together and supporting each other, having events, concerts, all because the voting starts tomorrow.
Right.
So everybody's out there networking with each other, and inevitably you build collaborations. I met Jim Kimo West 6, 7 years ago at one of these. We hit it
Okay.
off immediately. We talked about doing something together. A few years past, I get a gig at the NAMM show with Godin Guitars, and I invited Jim to come play with me.
Nice.
And we did a few songs there, and it was just like, oh, that was really easy. We should probably get together and record something. And we talked about it well, then COVID hit. And then
Right.
we talked about it again. And finally, very early this year, or possibly late last year, I'm going to say early this year, we finally got together and we sat down at his house. And that was the only song we wrote together in the same room.
Okay.
He came up with a verse and the chorus idea, and I would like go, oh no, go over there, go over there. So it's basically his idea with just a little bit of direction from me, and then I'm going, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this needs a bridge. Give me that guitar, and I played a bridge, and it had the night. What I love about collaborations is you can do kind of a Lennon McCartney where one of them has an identity over here, and one has an identity over here, and when you put them together, like John would come in and write a bridge to one of Paul's songs, and it just give a little bit of a tension there. So when it comes
Right.
back to Paul, it's all kind of like So it's got a really nice balance. So I think Jim and I managed to do that, and after that, we started doing everything remote, even though we live like 20 minutes away from each other.
Oh, wow.
It's just the nature of, he and I are just bopping around doing different things. And it's like, oh, here, let me send you a track. Oh, great. Let me write a bridge to that. I'll send you it back and, stuff like that. So it was about as remote as the album I did with Ricky in Bangalore.
Yeah, man. Have you been over to Bangalore yet?
Not yet. I'm looking forward to it
Well,
one of these days.
I've been twice with Hubert Laws, and
Oh, cool.
I really enjoyed that entire vibe and everything about it, which brings me to something else that you said that was so relevant, relevatory, kind of enlightening when we talked on the phone. And this was about genre. And I think this is important for us to discuss because I'm mostly known as a jazz guy, and there's a lot of confusion when people find me on Spotify because 10 different genres are listed for me. So somebody that's listening to my jazz trio record that just came out and they're trying to find that, if they find my new age piano improvisations, they're super bummed. They're like, I thought this guy could play jazz, and where's the bombastic, quarter note equals 300 giant steps and all that. And, being really open minded is something I know that you are. But what you said that hit home to me, and I want to talk about, is you said that you've felt like Spotify and some of these other services have helped change it over from genre categorization to mood categorization. And that was such an astute observation for me because anytime I meet a new person, they say, well, what genre are you in? And the Grammys, it's genre, genre, genre.
Yeah.
That's very frustrating, right? So, how did you arrive at that conclusion? That's very bright, actually.
Yeah, and I can't take credit for it. So bright
That's
enough
okay.
to use it, but not bright enough to come up with it. It was actually, I was talking to Ricky
Mm,
Cash. Because of his position in the Indian community, musically and environmentally, he gets to talk to people that we normally don't get to talk to, like
right.
the head of Spotify India.
Oh,
And the head of Spotify India was sharing with him that little slice of information. And he shared it with me. And I'm just going, yeah, that's it. That's what we need to be doing. And like you, as someone who drops into a different genre every album, my first album was Tibetan chants, second album was Latin guitar, third album was ambient synthesizers, jazz album, classical album, whatever. You know, I want people to be able to access my music without having to genre jump. But if they're going to
Right.
stay in the mood, I'm sure you have this too, where there's always a song from each album that has a thread to it.
Right.
So that's the mood, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So your playlists, like when I do playlists,
Mm.
I'm notorious for not wanting anybody to shuffle my music and tell me what to listen to. We
Right.
we did that enough as kids growing up with the transistor radios, wondering what they were going to feed to us next.
Right.
Um, I want to dictate my mood. So first thing when I wake up, I want to hear Will Ackerman Windham Hill guitar because that will soothe me. If I'm going to be working out, I want to hear Locky Doley, smashing it on the organ a la Humble Pie. So if
Wow.
I'm with my girl and we're having dinner, I want to put on some Brazilian music. So you want to really, we have the ability now to really curate our musical experiences. And if we're sticking to genres, it's very, cookie cutter.
Yeah.
And, we're all square pegs in these round holes. So we just need different holes, I think. And that's why I kind of gravitate to this idea of moods. One of the things I
Beautiful.
do a lot is work with singer-songwriters who don't write about, my boyfriend just dumped me. They write about, my father committed suicide, or,
Right.
I realized that I have issues with codependency, things about life, um, positive things too, not just bad things that have happened.
Hmm.
And so, when I was trying to figure out where does this go, I mean, it doesn't fit into pop because you're going up against Beyonce, doing a country record.
Taylor
How are you going to
Swift.
people, Taylor Swift? How are you going to get people to listen to a pop song that has lyrics that are meaningful? And there's been a lot of artists out there who have done songs here and there that are really impactful.
Hmm.
Sting's Fragile is the one that just jumped into my head.
Joni
Uh,
Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell all the time. Peter Gabriel, Don't Give Up. All these wonderful songs about the human experience, which singer-songwriters really embrace, but they don't get the airplay for it.
Mm.
So I started calling this New Age pop because the
Wow.
lyrics are New Age. You mentioned Song Divine, the rock opera I did a number of years ago, 2, 3 years ago. That's the Bhagavad Gita translated into and paraphrased into English, and all of them are pop songs. There's a rap song, there's a reggae song, there's a police style song, there's a Elton John style song. I'm all over the place, but
Yeah.
the uniform thing is the Bhagavad Gita, the words, the inspiring words of Arjuna talking to Lord Krishna.
Uh-huh.
So
Wow. Yeah.
trouble is when you're dealing with the Grammys, where it's all round holes. I submitted into New Age because if I submitted it into pop, it would be bye bye,
Well, you wouldn't
lost in
have.
the shuffle.
Right. Yeah.
But everybody is listening to New Age going, what? What? Reggae? That's not New Age. So
Mm.
there's this cognitive dissonance of understanding,
Exactly. Good term.
what this all is. And for New Age, to me, and we had this big long discussion, controversy, if you will, of changing the name from New Age to New Age Ambient and Chant. And I
Mm.
was under the camp that said, no, let's not change our branding. We've, as much as there's negative branding on New Age as being very woo woo, and there certainly is that element, it's still a very recognized brand that we could, you know, um, reclaim
Yeah,
as a.
you could gather your, circle the wagons and go for a specific thing that would carry it forward.
Yeah, I mean, I alluded to how Reagan made liberal a dirty word, and how it took us 20 years to reclaim that, saying, yeah, I'm a liberal and I'm effing proud of it because we care about people, blah, 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 blah. So in the
Right,
same way, we have to reclaim New Age and say, it's not elevator music, it's not just massage music, and it's certainly not woo-woo stuff, at least all the time. It's
right,
this huge umbrella that encompasses neoclassical, jazz-oriented stuff.
right.
Because when one year I was on the screening committee for New Age at the Grammys, and the person running it, Suzanne Doucette, who's I consider her the fairy godmother of New Age music. She
Yeah,
was
I
there
know
at the beginning.
Suzanne. Yeah, exactly.
She said it's all about the intent, not any specifics, but about the intent of the overall album. And when an album would come on that was kind of like, oh, everybody go, I'm not sure about this. I go, I know these people. These are very spiritual people. They're very interested in advancing our culture, our spirituality, our just our whole planet, you know. So they are embodying New Age. So I think you should keep it. So
Yeah, well,
anyway,
your perspective on the things, particularly from a spiritual aspect, I think is important because the commercialization of music is, I think, a battle that everybody has fought with the record companies, with the radio promoters, sometimes even the fans, because the woo-woo kind of thing that you're talking about, I know what you mean, and it just made me think we should just start a new genre called woo-woo and see what happens. But as a young musician listening to the early Wyndham Hill stuff, I really lost interest in it really quickly because number one, I wasn't environmentally conscious. My heroes were McCoy Tyner and Chick Corea and drunk guys like Dexter Gordon and cigarette smokers and high level like super complicated chords. And I studied theory with George Russell, who was like a mentor to Miles and all these things. So New Age for me, huge New Age community in Boulder, just up the road from me growing up,
oh yeah.
but it was not that interesting harmonically. So I just kind of said, oh, no, I'll just go on my jazz thing and hear all these guys. Alan Watts was writing his books, and there was Esalen Institute, and who was the guy I interviewed that used to take it? Stephen Halpern, all those cats. And he was a great interview too, because he was such like the Jewish sales guy in real life and like so laid back with an A minor chord for 30 minutes in the music. But
Right.
but he was just like, the sham wow guy with his sales pitches and stuff. When I talked to him, it was very interesting. But what a turning point was for me and all that was somebody that you're a fan of that I personally knew in Michael Hedges.
Oh yeah.
And so, Hedges was around Boulder a lot. The uh, Naropa
Naropa University,
Naropa
yeah.
Institute. Yeah, there was. I mean, I was interacting with all these guys, and Robin Ford came to town, who was seriously into the Buddhist thing. And that just goes to your point of how somebody can be like way out there doing all this really cool modern blues, but spiritually, his center is in the Buddhist thing. Now, are you a Buddhist person? Is that like your belief system? I usually ask about religion, but spirituality is
Well,
a component here.
yeah, I think for me, what's resonated in me most of my spiritual journeys has been Buddhism, which really isn't an ism. Uh, it becomes an ism when it goes to a country, when
Oh,
it gets imported from India, Nepal over to Tibet, or to China, or to Japan, or to Indonesia.
interesting.
um, it becomes a religion because what it really does is it morphs with the local religion, like Shinto and Buddhism became Zen,
Mm,
Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism became Chan. Tibetan Buddhism is really kind of like a hybrid of the really extravagant visuals and sounds and
mm.
colors of Hinduism, but with a Buddhist context. And so it's very much it's a different thing in every country. And I like to think of, and maybe this is arrogant, but I like to think that in the West, because we don't have that cultural component, because it didn't blend with Christianity or Judaism,
Right.
although there's a tremendous amount of people of Jewish heritage in the Buddhist community.
Now,
It's
yeah,
it's
now
become
are.
more of a philosophy and more of what I consider uh, more of to the original intent of it, in the sense that it's been kind of stripped of all its cultural and religious components. So it's just about the philosophy that Gautama Buddha was trying to put forward.
Hmm.
Um, and it does closely link up to Taoism from my research in that. But again, Taoism also has its cultural Chinese elements that are very distinctive. And so each time you go to a different spiritual community or religious community, you're looking at three different things: the nationalism of the country or community, the religion, the native religion, like in Tibet, it was Bon, the nativist, animist, I think is the right word.
Oh, right. Uh-huh.
And then you're looking at the actual teaching. So they all blend in to create different things in every different country.
So it's incredible, man. I mean, when did you have time to study all that stuff? You're getting really deep over here. I don't know if my young
I'm,
listeners are going to tune out or not,
yeah,
but
hang with me here.
no, it's fascinating for me because I'm so fortunate to get people in in your rarefied air mentally and spiritually on the show, and I think I'm going to definitely want to do a part two with you um, about just going into depth on some of these other things because I was raised as a Southern Baptist Christian, right?
Mm.
And I got exposed to all this stuff up in Boulder. Like, I went to college in Greeley and we would go to Boulder and everybody was, doing a lot of meditation. And then the books were out there with Alan Watts and other people. There was a lot of drugs getting done. And, late 70s, what's not to like about all that? But the music, and you probably agree with me, like the end result is what is, putting the music out, getting it recorded, and then how are people reacting to that thing that encompasses everything that we've been talking about, right?
Yeah, I think there's also, we talked about different genres that we've dipped into, different moods, whatever.
Right.
But there's a common thread to all the music we make, and this is something I just kind of realized in the last year or so is that I can connect the music I was listening to when I was, 8 years old to the music I'm making right now, in the sense that what moved my soul at that young age is the same inspiration that still moves my soul, even though it takes on different faces.
Uh-huh.
In Greek, original Greek theater, they would have a mask, and that was called a persona.
Right.
And that's when we talk about being a person, we talk about the mask that we're wearing. So um, understanding that we're just changing our masks, but it's the same spirit that drives it. I got turned on to classical music late junior high, early high school,
Okay.
and I just went crazy with some of the pastoral English composers, Britten, Holst, Vaughan Williams, and the French, Debussy, Ravel, Satie, because they all have that similar element of heart that comes through. It's not just,
Yeah.
Beethoven's about passion. Uh, Mozart's about, I think, wit.
Hmm.
Bach is about a mathematical perfection of the universe.
Right.
But the French and English composers of the late 1800s, early 1900s had this impressionistic spirit, pastoral spirit that comes out,
Right.
and that really moved me. And then when I started listening to progressive rock, the parts that really attracted me weren't necessarily the jazz oriented virtuosity. It was the mood and the spiritual aspect. I always
Wow.
quote Yes's Relayer album, The Gates of Delirium, which is this battle scene, but it three-quarters of the way it comes down to a ambient thing for about 2 minutes, and it's
Right.
like I heard that, I went, oh my god, I love that. How do we do more of that? And this
Right.
is 1976, so
Wow.
you
Huh.
know, outside of Harold Budd, Brian Eno, Stephen Halpern, Constance Denby, there weren't a lot of people who were like delving into that, that kind of calm, and that comes, at least as far as I interpret it, from the Indian tradition,
Mm.
because Indian music, and I'm far from an expert on this, but from my exposure to it, it's non-harmonic. It's melodically oriented. So
Right.
that's why
Yeah.
there's the drones
Right.
happening
Right. Didn't have
and
chords. No
didn't
chords
have
originally.
chords. So
Right.
when you talk about, Stephen Halpern doing an A minor for 30 minutes, it's essentially that same vibe of letting the drone um,
Develop.
hypnotize you, do its magic, pull you in a heart space. And so that's why, most of the music I do in the new age-ish genre-ish has a lot of Indian music influences. And, look at George Harrison,
Right.
look at that music, that he did early in the Beatles and early in his solo career. It's incorporating
Amazing.
that same element.
Well,
So there's a tie-in through all of this.
yeah, it's just fun to have somebody on that's not wrapped up in the hoopla and the commercialization of the stuff, because I've always tried to just tell people who may or may not like my personality. I do a lot of, I'm a weird combination of things. Like sometimes at a jazz show, I'll sprinkle in 30 minutes of average stand-up comedy, and then I'll play this real serious music, and people get really thrown off by the different dimensions there. But your voice and all of your viewpoints and everything you've studied, it all comes out when you do these projects, man. Like I can hear it. And it is to hear you describing the pathway that led you to where you're at, is it's really great. I mean, I love it.
uh, Ricky, Ricky was giving me a ribbing about, he says, well, you don't really have any lead instrument in your stuff. And I'm going, what? He goes, it's always moving somewhere. And I'm going, wow, for somebody who grew up as a rock and roller, I picked that up from classical music. Music
Right.
moves from the first violins to the horns to the oboes to the flutes. And I love that how it weaves in. It's a little bit like being out in nature and
Right.
watching the trees and the leaves and the birds and everything's so connected to itself and it's all shifting effortlessly. So that's what I aim to do.
Well, I mean, Jim actually, even before I heard your collaborations, he hit me last year, that maybe it was 2 years ago, with one particular song that had all that stuff in it. It's maybe two albums back, and I actually reached out to him because I liked the rest of the album, but in that one song, all that stuff came together, and I was just, and it wasn't that complicated, but it just blew my mind because all those other components. Well, we're within the last 90 seconds here already. It went by really fast. But I want to encourage everybody out there to check out uh, Vito's amazing litany of projects that he's put out this year. 8 Grammy entries on the first round ballot. And you know what, man? As mostly an instrumental composer, I would love for you to win all 8. And then if you win all 8 of them, then they'll have to put it in the main telecast. Here's like a instrumental dude that won more Grammys this year than Beyonce, and he won more Grammys than Snoop Dogg and all that, because your stuff is really fantastic, and I'm thrilled to have you on. So good luck,
Oh, it's
man.
been my pleasure. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
good
I'd be
luck.
happy with one. One would be good.
One would be good. Well, I got my fingers crossed, and I'll see you in Facebook FYC land soon.
Definitely.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for part one with Vito, and I hope he'll have time to come. I know he's super busy, but I hope he'll have time to come back on and do a part two soon. So thanks for listening. Don't forget to love and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see everybody really soon. Bye bye.